Hi, welcome to Breastfeeding with Sarah. I'm Sarah, your lactation consultant. Today, we're going to be talking about placenta encapsulation and its risks to your milk supply. So I'm going to share with you really important information that I want everyone to hear, and please listen to this video and pass it along to other people so they can get this important information. Come join us. I'm going to take you on a lactation journey and see just how placenta encapsulation fits into breastfeeding. And you may be surprised. Now, placenta encapsulation is a growing fad that you may have heard of, or if you're pregnant, you may start hearing about.
Eating the placenta. You think it's like the right thing to do, this hippie thing to do, and it's good for you, and like Native Americans do it. I'm like, I don't think so. This is what Sarah taught us. When you're eating it, you're eating all your estrogen and all those hormones that were in your placenta. Placenta's there to tell your body that you're still pregnant, and to keep creating all these hormones, and your body's reacting like it's pregnant. So when you're pregnant, you're not lactating, you're not giving milk. So if you're eating your placenta, you're telling your body, don't create milk.
When you're pregnant, you are in the pregnancy hormone dominant state, high levels of estrogen and progesterone coming from the placenta. The circulating estrogen and progesterone during pregnancy binds to the prolactin receptor sites and inhibits prolactin from binding to them. So your milk's not going to be coming in during pregnancy. You'll be in the colostrum phase. Your milk won't come in during pregnancy. It won't come in until after the baby's born. It isn't your baby being born that tells your body that your baby's been born. It's actually your placenta leaving the body that tells your body that your baby's been born. It's the release of all of those pregnancy hormones, estrogen and progesterone, that have been residing in the placenta. As soon as that leaves your body, and that frees up your prolactin receptor sites on your breast. And that's when your milk comes in 3 days after the birth. 3 days after the birth, your milk comes in because your placenta left your body. Once the placenta leaves the body, we shift from the pregnancy hormone dominant state to the lactation hormone dominant state. And they cannot exist at the same time. They inhibit each other. So we need to shift out of the pregnancy dominant hormonal state. So get rid of the estrogen and progesterone. And we need to have high levels of prolactin to build and maintain a milk supply. We also know that if during the birth, a tiny piece of placenta was left in the uterus, that's called retained placenta, then that is enough pregnancy hormones staying in the body that can inhibit your milk from coming in. So we know a reason why some women's milk doesn't come in is if they have retained placenta, because even a pea-sized amount of placenta has enough estrogen and progesterone to inhibit your milk from coming in. So what happens with this fad of ingesting your placenta? Taking in the placenta is taking in the pregnancy hormones again, estrogen and progesterone, and that effectively downregulates your milk supply. Research shows that progesterone actively downregulates prolactin receptor sites, which are needed to make more milk. So this can stunt milk supply and milk supply capacity. Research shows that there are significant levels of active estrogen and progesterone in the placenta after processing for encapsulation. The dehydration process may actually make the progesterone levels more concentrated. Estrogen and progesterone inhibit prolactin from binding to the prolactin receptor sites and downregulate the prolactin receptor sites. What I have found clinically is that ingesting placenta downregulates milk supply by about 50%. The sooner the mother stops ingesting her placenta, the sooner her milk supply can rebound. But if she has taken the full 4 to 6 week course of the pills, I find that her milk supply never fully recovers. Now, I never wonder how much milk someone has. I know exactly how much milk they have. As a lactation consultant, we look at babies' weight gain trend over time, which is the best indicator of how they're growing and gaining and if they're getting enough to eat. I can also have the baby be weighed on a very accurate scale that can measure to the nearest 2 grams. So what I can do is weigh the baby before they breastfeed, have them on a breastfeeding session, and then weigh them again after they breastfeed. And what I can do with measuring that is see how much milk they transferred at that feeding. And so I know exactly how much milk a baby is taken in. In my work, I assess for all possible factors that could be contributing to low milk supply or poor milk transfer, like prior medical or surgical or anatomical conditions in the mom, poor breastfeeding management, poor latching technique, maternal medications, infant medical conditions, infant suck dysfunction, and tongue ties, to name a few. I can get the families access to treatment for various conditions that affect milk supply and identify and resolve most underlying causes. What I have found is that placenta ingestion is an independent variable that causes low milk supply, and I have over 12 years of experience in countless cases in which I have been able to measure this. So if any of you have heard of placenta encapsulation before this video, you've probably only ever heard of benefits to the practice and all the myths surrounding it that are going around online. Let's take a look at 7 common myths circulating out there, and I'll show you the evidence debunking them. Eating placenta is a traditional human practice. False. So what I've found is that scientists have studied this topic, and they've looked at cultures from all around the world, all throughout time, trying to find human cultures where postpartum women ate their placenta after the birth. So guess how many they found? They found 0 cultures where postpartum women ate their placenta after the birth. 0. And it wasn't that they didn't find what they did with their placentas after the birth. They found exactly what they did. All cultures throughout time have ritual disposal or burial of their placenta. So that's a traditional human practice. The traditional human practice is to do ritual disposal or burial of the placenta. There were anecdotal accounts of women eating their placenta. It was the 1970s in Northern California, where the hippie moms from the home birth movement were eating their placenta as like placenta stew or placenta lasagna. So I've heard accounts of the women from that time saying that they were just trying to do what was normal with birth. And so they were giving birth at home, and they saw their cats and dogs, cows and goats eating their placenta, and they thought, oh, we must have forgotten that's what we were supposed to do. So they went ahead and did it themselves. And here's the thing about when they did it: when they cooked placenta stew or placenta lasagna, they cooked the heck out of it. So they heated it so much, they undoubtedly deactivated those hormones with all the cooking, making it into lasagna or a stew. So it's pretty much harmless with the way that they were doing it. And it wasn't a fad that really caught on. It wasn't until 2006 that it really became a new fad that was invented and became a business to not destroy the hormones in the placenta, instead to dehydrate them and encapsulate them, because people will take pills. And it was thought that if you harness the hormones that are in the placenta by just dehydrating them and encapsulating them and have women ingest them, that's something you can market to them and sell them back their placenta in a bottle of pills and tell them that it will prevent postpartum depression. Eating placenta prevents postpartum depression. False. A randomized controlled double-blind study found that ingesting placenta postpartum did not help improve maternal mood. Another study came up with the same results. An additional study was done comparing women who ingested placenta versus those who didn't, and after accounting for multiple confounding variables, found that ingesting placenta postpartum actually resulted in higher postpartum depression scores. This is consistent with what I have seen with mothers I have worked with who ingested their placenta. So the shifting of hormones that has been marketed as a sign of postpartum depression is definitely a myth. It's a natural hormonal process. It's a natural hormonal shifting that's supposed to happen, and by clinical definition is not postpartum depression. The baby blues is a transitional hormonal state that makes women emotional and vulnerable for a couple of days, and by clinical definition it is not postpartum depression. It's nothing pathological or harmful. There's a Native American saying, in fact, that when the milk comes in, the tears come in. It's like a river flowing. It's nothing harmful. It's actually something sacred that's meant to be protected. And so I like to just acknowledge that our bodies work just fine the way they are, the way we give birth, the way we hormonally cycle. And we're meant to have a hormonal shift and be supported in that by our family and friends in our community, not be told that there's something wrong with the way our body does a hormonal shift after birth. And so postpartum depression is, by clinical definition, something that starts later after 2 weeks postpartum, and it has psychosocial risk factors, not a hormonal imbalance. So why do some women rave about eating their placenta, say it was so helpful and love doing it? So I want to talk about what's in those placenta pills are estrogen, progesterone, which are sex steroids. Those are steroids that you're taking in, giving that energy buzz. So that energy buzz is not a natural thing. It's nothing beneficial, protecting your mental health. It's being on steroids, causing an energy surge. And that is something that's not natural and not healthy and not a prevention for postpartum depression. Being on steroids does not prevent postpartum depression. So it's something very concerning in our society that we think that a new new postpartum mother needs to be amped up on steroids to be able to function well. It's a very sad state that we're in, that we can't have our postpartum mothers nest and rest and be supported and recover from the birth with all that support. Instead, they have to be up scrubbing their kitchen floor 3 days after the birth, or out getting their nails done, which is what I hear women who eat their placenta often feel that they have to do with that big energy buzz. Eating placenta increases iron levels for new moms. False. Research studies done show that there is no improvement in iron levels from ingesting placenta after the birth. Eating placenta increases milk supply. False. There are a few studies done that placenta encapsulation proponents regularly cite to say placenta ingestion increases milk supply, but these were done in 1917, 1918, and 1954, and the methods used were not done to today's scientific standards, so cannot be considered legitimate research to draw conclusions from. There have not been any studies done that accurately assess milk supply. Placenta hormones are known prolactin and milk supply inhibitors. See the section on hormones in the Placenta Risks website that reviews these hormones in detail and how ingesting placenta can have an effect on lactation. The Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine lists placenta encapsulation as a potential cause of low milk supply in their protocol on the use of galactagogues from 2018. It can be really hard to know what a full milk supply is and how much milk you're making. Milk supply isn't something that we see when a baby's breastfeeding. So it may seem like baby's breastfeeding enough. It may seem like they're getting enough. And as a matter of fact, they may be nursing around the clock. And you may think, oh, there's plenty of milk, but there's actually a red flag feeding pattern. If a baby nurses continuously around the clock, that's a sign that they're not getting enough to eat. So see my video on how to tell if a baby's getting enough to eat with breastfeeding. That'll give you some really good tangible ways of knowing if your baby's getting enough to eat and assessing weight gain and intake. And for those women who have a natural oversupply, yes, downregulating your milk supply by 50% still could make it so baby could get just enough to eat. But the prolactin receptor sites are still actively being downregulated. So this could come into play, which I often see at 3 months postpartum with a faltering of milk supply because those prolactin receptor sites were downregulated, and they actually are supposed to come into play at 3 months postpartum. So even if you have an oversupply in the beginning that's downregulated, but you're still making enough for your baby, take a close look at 3 months postpartum, because there may be a significant drop in your milk supply and the baby's weight gain at that point. All animals eat their placenta, so we should too. False. So some researchers have gone to this field trying to figure out why do animals eat their placenta when humans don't, and they found that yes, all mammals eat their placenta except humans, marine mammals, and camels. And so why do all other mammals eat their placenta except humans, marine mammals, and camels? Animals have to give birth in the wild, and they give birth in isolation. They're not social birthers like humans are. Humans are social birthers, which means we have like midwife attended births traditionally. And so animals give birth alone, often to multiple pups in the wild, where they're vulnerable. They are vulnerable to predators. They are vulnerable to being attacked, and they have to be giving birth. So as they're giving birth, they've evolved to ingest their placenta as it's coming out. And so that not only gets rid of the tissue and the blood and the smell that animals could track them with, but it also has a pain relief hormone that's in it very temporarily. It deactivates almost instantly after it comes out, but that hormone helps keep them their pain level down, so they can be silent while they're giving birth and give birth to multiple pups by themselves. That is why animals eat their placenta. They've evolved to do it instantaneously and not have it affect their milk supply. Humans have not. Eating placenta postpartum is a part of traditional Chinese medicine. False. There's a big myth perpetuated that traditional Chinese medicine has prescribed desiccated placenta to postpartum women. It couldn't be further from the truth. I looked into the research of one of the world's top Chinese medicine scholars who can read and literally translate the ancient texts, and whose specialty is in women's health, and who actually did a thesis paper on what ancient Chinese women did with their placentas after the birth. She has made it very clear that in traditional Chinese medicine, the properties of the placenta are in direct opposition to the properties a postpartum woman should have, so is contraindicated. And what's more, it was absolutely never a practice in traditional Chinese medicine for postpartum women to ingest their placenta. They all did ritual burial of their placentas. It is explained that in a review of the ancient texts, placenta was a rare medical ingredient that was sold by a few elite pharmacists to strangers with no connection to the original human source, and this rare use was for people with non-postpartum conditions. It was warned that they should have great caution as it has toxic properties. The fact that it has made it into Western adapted texts of traditional Chinese medicine is an unfortunate misinterpretation of the traditional texts. Eating placenta is a harmless practice. False. So there's studies that have been done showing there's high levels of bacteria in the placenta that can be harmful to the baby. See this case report about a baby who was actively infected, and it was discovered that the mother had been ingesting placenta pills. The same bacteria found in this baby's infection were found in the placenta pills the mother had been ingesting. There's also risk for blood clots. If you eat your placenta, it gives you the pregnancy hormones back in your body. And we know the pregnancy hormones carry a risk of thromboembolism or a blood clot with the estrogen levels in them. So please be careful. We're not meant to be taking in these hormones that can cause blood clots or stroke. So just know it's not a natural practice, and it's not without risks. There are risks, and it's not something that's going to be helpful. Get this information out to as many people as you can who are pregnant or who have just had a baby and are considering doing it, or who have just started, or who have low milk supply and you're not sure why. Ask them about this. Ask if they're ingesting their placenta.
Please don't do that. Don't eat your placenta. By the way, don't eat your placenta. There should be bumper stickers. P.S. Sarah said so.